Everybody could go ahead and get seated. We're going to get started. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out. I know it's a beautiful summer day, so we appreciate you being here. Tonight's presentation is about the history of the Butler County Fair, and it's brought to you by the Butler County Historical Society. This 150th anniversary of the fair is really worth celebrating, not just for all of those who have enjoyed and participated in the fair, but those who will continue to make memories in the future, and certainly for those who also work so hard to make the fair happen every year. And we have a lot of Fair Board members here tonight, and we sure appreciate them. We're enjoying this spacious, state-of-the-art building built by the Butler County Ag Society, thanks in part to the effort of tonight's presenter, who worked to educate the community about the need for an event center in Butler County. Diane Duren will tell us about the history of Butler County Fair with the knowledge of a person who was a fair participant in her youth and an adult whose family have been longtime supporters of the Butler County Fair. Please join me in welcoming Diane Duren.
Thank you, Gina. And thank you to the Butler County Historical Society for recognizing an opportunity to share some very important history in conjunction with the celebration of the 150th anniversary of the Butler County Fair. I always wonder if I'm qualified to be up here in front of all of you to talk about history, as I'm sure there are some better historians in this audience tonight. However, I am proud to be a part of the 6 generations of my family who have participated in the Butler County Fair and 4-H. So the passion for 4-H and the Butler County Fair runs quite deep in our family, and my husband Jeff was also on the Fair Board for 21 years. I have many friends and relatives here in the audience tonight too that have the same family history and connections. I'm sure I can speak for many of you in this room that some of our best friendships have developed through 4-H and FFA and the fair. In doing the research over the past 9 to 10 months, it became very clear very early to me that there's no way we can touch on everything in 2 hours. We have thousands of photos and videos, so tonight's presentation is simply going to highlight the milestones in history and will not be able to delve into any one topic in depth, and I'm sure all of you understand. We won't be able to show every photo in the presentation tonight, so our plan is to create a rotating photo gallery for the Butler County Fair that you can all view at the fair. I should also mention we have lots of memorabilia in the back, and that is not to be taken. That is just for display only tonight. My sources for tonight's presentation came from the newspapers of the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Nebraska Extension, Butler County, Marilyn Zellinger, and also the Butler County Ag Society, and the many years of minutes that the Ag Society board allowed me to look through. Also, thanks to Gina Barleen for being my person to lean on for information and advice for planning, and to the Butler County Historical Society for trusting in me to do this presentation. Also, I need to thank my husband Jeff, who shakes his head every time I say yes to one of these projects. His unending support is appreciated, so thanks, Jeff. I also have one of our 3 daughters here tonight. They were all involved in 4-H, Shauna and her 2 kids, and my 2 of our 4 grandchildren that round out the 6 generations that have been involved in Butler County in 4-H. Also, thanks to the many people who donated the memorabilia, and it really is about the stories and memories that we want as part of our history program, so thanks to all of you. Also, thanks to the Nebraska Extension here in Butler County, who had a workshop this afternoon in conjunction with our program, and they had about 20 kids here this afternoon, and they made memory boxes and those memory boxes will be entered into the fair. So that was a really neat project, and if you want to look at those are over to my left. We will have lots to tell. This program for the Historical Society is the longest to date, but there's so much to point out, so we'll have a halfway kind of intermission, about 5 to 7 minutes. And we hope that you'll stay for the entire presentation, as there are prizes at the end. And we will start a slideshow again at the end, so if you want to stay around and visit and watch that, please do so. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. And I do apologize, I'm not going to be standing here at the podium. I'm going to be out looking up at the slides. This room's a little bit different than the other room over there that we've given our presentations in. Okay, the mission statement of the Butler County Fair is to educate, entertain, and celebrate excellence by showcasing Nebraska agriculture in a clean and safe environment while reinforcing a sense of community and shared culture that is the pride of all Butler County citizens. When did the fair actually get organized? Well, the Butler County Ag Society was organized under the provisions of the general statutes on October 18th of 1873 with the following named officers. I'm not going to read all of them, but you can see the last names, such as Ford as president, Winship and Haynes as VPs, Brown as secretary, and Perkins as treasurer, and then all of these gentlemen were board of managers. When did the first fair start? The first annual fair was held near David City, Nebraska. If you can imagine, it was in October 1875, out on the open prairie. I have yet to find out where this was at, and if anybody knows that, please come up to me afterwards and I will update my slide. But if you can imagine, no enclosures, save a single rope around the exhibition items and around the announcer stand, and it was held in the fall. And it was largely attended according to the newspapers, and in all respects creditable and successful, with the display of vegetables being especially remarkable. The highlight for the first fair was corn was displayed by Dr. S.L. Brown about a half a mile from the fair grounds, in which 53 ears weighed a bushel. And many of the ears grew from a stalk at a point of 8 feet above the ground. And another gentleman had an exhibition of a squash weighing 239.5 pounds, one of 6 grown from 2 single seeds, weighing in at 1,100 pounds. So where did the fair go from there? In 1882, it said that the Ag Society was now flourishing, and its grounds were laid out nicely, enclosing a well-arranged hall for the exhibition of produce, and one of the best half-mile trotting courses in the state was established. And the officers, again, in 1882 were the following. I'm not going to read all of them, but you probably recognize some of these names as very prominent names in Butler County. This was a picture. We're not sure what the date is on this. It's not in the 1800s, but you can see the trotting track, the grandstands, and here's the horse barn. These are the livestock barns here, and then here's the ag hall, and there's the round building. Back in those days, all of the machinery was just parked out in the open, and I remember when we were young, I remember the Allen boys showing their dairy out here, but I'm sure there were a lot of other things, sheep and so forth, being shown because there was really no show facility at that time. This is an advertisement for the 1896 fair. They said it was the greatest show on earth, and this was just an advertisement in the David City News. And then they started kind of having some problems in the late 1800s, and this newspaper article, the People's Banner, basically they weren't real pleased with the fair. I'm not going to read the whole article, but they weren't real keen on the fair. In the David City News in 1896, it said, I thought this one was good, if the men in the county would follow the example of the ladies in making exhibits at our county fair, no county in the state could surpass the Butler County Fair. I thought that one was good. And then the Bellwood Gazette in 1896 also said, if you have raised something this year that is extra good, take a sample to the Butler County Fair. It's under new management. With everybody's cooperation, it will be a rousing success. So they were basically promoting people to come to the fair. Again, times were tough in the late 1800s and into the early 1900s under new management. This article here was not so nice. It was from the Butler County Republican, and they said that the Platte County Fair Association had disbanded, and the press advises Butler County to do the same thing. They thought that there shouldn't be a fair, and you can go on and on here in this article. On the other hand, there was an article here in People's Banner in May of 1900 that it was under new management. It was going to be held the end of August, and they're arranging to hold the best fair ever given in Butler County, and prepare to do your part. The attractions at the fair in 1900 under new management, basically this article said that the largest balloon in the world, Professor Rice will cut loose in a closed parachute 4,000 feet above the earth, hanging head down, and next day then he shoots into the clouds from an 8-foot cannon suspended from a flying balloon, and performances by trained pigs. I thought that was interesting. So then again, still struggling in the 1900s. It seemed to be in 1900, that was kind of the turning point for the fair. The Rising City Independent, again, they said that report has it that at the Butler County Fair, gambling was in full blast and suckers a great many. And I'm not pleased about that. And I thought maybe out of this article from the Ulysses Dispatch that I think maybe entertainment was kind of hard to get, because they buried a woman alive 5 feet deep at the Butler County Fair. She was buried in a box, had 2 tubes running up out of the ground to give her air, and through which she conversed, and she remained buried for 48 hours. If you can imagine. So here's another article from the Surprise Herald in October of 1900. The Butler County Fair is in progress this week with a great many surprise-ites. I'd never heard of that one before. Surprise-ites are attending. We have heard various opinions expressed as to the character of the show, but all are agreed in denouncing the authorities for allowing the gambling fraternity full swing. So these people did not like gambling. And then the Rising City Independent in November also said that they learned that the county board of supervisors were going to withhold $500 for the fair for the reason that the latter allowed gambling to be carried on at the fair. It's in violation, and if this to be true, every good citizen in the county should stand by the board of supervisors, for if the fair cannot be made a success on right principles, you better not have a fair at all. In 1901, the public opinion was strong about the future of Butler County, both positive and negative, and I'm not going to read the whole article here, but basically it was S. Klingman who gave all of these reasons for a local county fair, and it was a really good editorial or opinion article. And then on the other side you had a negative from Vanderkolk, and he basically said there's no reason to have a state fair, or excuse me, a county fair, when you can go to the state fair and see 50 times as many entries. So positive and negative in 1901. Then in 1901, they also announced that there would be no Butler County Fair, just due to lack of proper support on the part of our businessmen and farmers who ought to be interested in a county fair. So they were kind of coming down on them a little hard. And also in time to make it a success. Because of the drought, it cut short, obviously, vegetation, and please note, which made it impossible to get the class of racehorses here. So that was important too. Then things are looking up again in 1902. They announced some dates, and at first it was July. And they said that there would be some nominees for governor in this article. The Garrison Argus said that it will be July 15th through the 18th, and there would be a circuit race meeting with it. Then you go on, and here, in the Bellwood Gazette in July, it basically comes out and says that it was a fake. That all they did was they just basically said the candidates for governor and congressman saying that they would speak was a fake, as the candidates knew nothing about it until they saw their names in print. And they felt that that was just a drawing card. And then also in July of 1902, it said, it seems strange that the managers of the Butler County Fair should persist in holding a county fair horse race every year and thus squander $500 of the taxpayers' money. The county fair, which used to be a county fair in name at least, isn't even that now. So then it got moved to September of that year. It didn't happen in July. And also there was a new president, so C.W. Derby resigned. And then over here in the Bellwood Gazette, it talked about the fact that they were kind of regrouping and they were going to have the very best fair possible. And then, of course, Rising City Independent had to chime in and said, isn't it too bad that the Butler County Fair has been postponed for 2 weeks? So it got moved to October then. And what a blessing it would be if the fair would be postponed for all time to come. So basically, the county fair wasn't in operation, and no fair was held after 1902. And the fairgrounds then were let out. So it sat empty from 1902 to basically 1908. And then the county supervisors advertised for bids for the use of the property. And then after reading and considering the bids, in December of 1907, they offered the land to Dr. J.D. Sprague, and for $150. And like I said, it was leased out for about 5-6 years, and yet there was still horse racing. So the Butler County Fair is a thing of the past, but Butler County people can go see races in Columbus. And then talk of a new fair is being held along with funding appropriated. So the Ag Society held a meeting this was reported in July of 1909. There was a great attendance, a lot of farmers being present. They were all favorable to holding a county fair and decided to hold one on September 24th through the 26th. They elected a new president to fill and then basically it just says they're gonna have a fair. And really, that didn't happen. I couldn't find anything that said that the fair actually happened then, even though they announced it. So the fair didn't happen for quite a long time. And then there was a crucial and significant turning point for the Butler County Fair when on February 22nd, 1911, some men came together and formed the Butler County Agricultural and Livestock Association. That's a long name, so I'm probably going to abbreviate here. But basically they had a big meeting, and the highlights I pulled out of that was it was formed in 1911 at the Butler County Courthouse, and John Hassick from Linwood Township was elected president. Henry Bach from the Franklin Township was VP. Dr. Sprague from David City was secretary, and M.J. Holland of David City was treasurer. All of these were directors, so they pretty much represented almost every township in Butler County, along with some various towns such as Ulysses and David City and Rising City. And the Constitution and bylaws were signed by 41 men in attendance. So they had some vision, and they knew that they wanted to start some type of a fair. And so then in May of 1911, the county supervisors decided that they would allocate funds for this exhibition, and they appropriated $2,000 to make improvements at the Butler County Fairgrounds. So, you know, it sat for a long time and it needed some improvements. Basically, it said that there would be, let's see here, I think that's my next slide. Yes, so more plans were made for the first annual exhibit, and the work on the fairgrounds was reported in July of 1911, and it said that they would include an amphitheater, an ag hall, a cattle shed, a hog house, and a poultry house. So the buildings are to be completed in early September. And then in August of 1911, it said, so good a program is being arranged for the first annual exhibit of the Butler County Ag and Livestock Association. And the dates would be in August then. And then the People's Banner reported that a great showing of Butler County livestock is assured, and on, and it's just trying to excite people for the upcoming exhibit. Here's an advertisement that was in the newspaper, and that was in the People's Banner, and it's this here plus this, and it talked about ag exhibits, livestock exhibits, poultry, women's work exhibits, and so forth. And then there was another little ad that was in the paper as well. So some highlights taken from the first fair was that it was the first fair of the 20th century. It was open to any person, And remember, this was the Ag and Livestock Association, so 600 people joined that group that year. And the grandstand gate was 25 cents, and 443 tickets were sold, and 250 season ticket holders paid $2.50 for 3 days. And 9,000 people attended that first fair, 453 entries, and then I'm not going to read all the entertainment, but you can see, bronco busting, prizes, a parade, and then again, the new buildings, which included all of those that I'd mentioned, plus a grandstand that seated 1,500 people. So here's that picture again. Again, we don't know the date on this picture, but you can see the trotting track and all of the buildings that were mentioned of the 1911 fair. This also, things seem to roll around really well from 1912 to 1929. Grandstand receipts I found from 1918, actually, the date was cut off up here, up to 1931. I thought this was interesting. You could see how the gate receipts grew from 1918 clear up to 1931. They also kept track of the weather. They would say rain or hot, and I thought that was really interesting. And then news taken from 1918 said that it was the best, had the largest attendance ever, and opening day was September 18th with 10,000 people attending and $5,200 in gate receipts. And then 1922, then they said that was the biggest fair, so it was continuing to grow. Entries in 22 were totaled nearly 2,000. Can you imagine? That was huge. And businesses in David City, I didn't know this, I learned this, that they closed each day of the fair from 1 to 5 p.m. And it was the 12th annual Butler County Fair and the 10th year of Secretary W.H. McGaffin's efficient management, according to the newspaper. And then let's talk about extension, because that's hugely important to the fair in any county. And I want to talk about its impact on Butler County. Nebraskans turn to Nebraska Extension to strengthen their families, inspire their communities, empower young people, conserve and protect natural resources, and advance their farms, ranches, and businesses. Nebraska Extension, known as Cooperative Extension, was officially established in 1914 through the Smith-Lever Act. So 4-H work here in Butler County was actually organized in 1923. And then in 1930, a home service organization was formed to help the girls in the county and offer assistance. Chosen to lead this group were Mrs. S.W. Phillips, Mrs. Frank Selden, Vice President Mrs. Vic Dolfer, and Mrs. Fred Dollison, and then news reporters were Mrs. Fromm and Mrs. Kindler. You might recognize some of those family names. And then who was the first 4-H club? I found out that in 1931, they made an effort to sync up the girls' work, the 4-H girls, to the ladies, and sync up the 4-H club cycle projects and leader training. And in 31, Charles Lemley of Rising City started the first club with Dr. S.W. Phillips and Mrs. Phillips, and then also with the assistance of William Yannicke, Mr. and Mrs. V.E. Dolfer, and Mrs. Dollison. So I asked Louise how many extension agents we've had, and this was interesting. We've had 45 over the years, and the longest stint, of course, was the infamous Delmer Lang, and this is his, and he was from 1966 to 1944. And then this is the second page of that list, and we now have Janessa. Janessa's here, I believe. Where is she? There she is in her hand. She's over there. And so I also wanted to mention Louise Neiman, who has been with the Extension Office for 25 years, serving Butler County, and she's also here this evening. So now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to provide a documentaries from Louise Swoboda Neiman, who has been involved with the Nebraska Extension Butler County for 25 years and has fond memories of the fair. Okay, we have Louise Neiman with us. Louise is the office manager of the Nebraska Extension at Butler County. And Louise is going to tell us how many years she's been
I started with Extension in the late 90s, so I've been here before the turn of the century. So about 25 years. It's sure a fun place to work. I enjoy being office manager.
Great. What memories do you have of your early years with the extension educators? I'm not sure how many you actually have worked for, and also 4-H members. And the second question is, what most has changed since the years when you first started in extension?
Before I started, Delmer Lane was here, so my first experiences were extension people were local celebrities. You would see them in the newspaper. Their pictures were there and all the information they had about everything you ever wanted to know. That weekly news column was important because it gave you university-based research information. Now educators are programming regularly, so not so much in the office. They are out there taking that information into the communities, into the schools, and meeting with people firsthand. Early years, oh my goodness. With 4-H, most of the families lived on the farm. And so when I think about fair, we had really huge beef and swine and sheep, large animal shows. And then in later years, people started to join 4-H to know about the farm, to know about their rural communities. And they came from the city areas or from acreages. And so it's changed in that the small animals, even the poultry and the rabbits are the growing shows at the Butler County Fair.
Great. How would you describe the way that you processed information when you started in the 90s versus how technology has changed how you manage the office here in Butler County?
So when I first started, everybody would come in with their paperwork, and that was if they joined 4-H or if they were coming to do fair entry. We would have long lines all the way down the hall, almost to the entry or coming into the courthouse. We would stay extra hours to make sure that everybody got their information in on time. Now when we do it online, so much of it is done at home by the families and the 4-H members that we process the data and don't even get to see the kids maybe more than once a year at Butler County Fair.
So I understand that when you were young and also into your adulthood that you did come to the Butler County Fair. What do you remember most about the Butler County Fair?
Well, I was able to be in 4-H when I was in grade school because my teacher was not only our teacher but our 4-H leader. For 2 years at Speedway School, I was in 4-H, and we did conservation practices. We learned about soil and water and how to conserve and take care of our land, but we also learned farm safety. And then those items went to Butler County Fair. I didn't get to go to fair every day to see what was going on there. I didn't even get to go every year. But when I did get to go, it was exploring the fairgrounds. We went to the livestock buildings, we went to the horse show to see what was going on, we went to the round building to see the school exhibits, and then into the exhibit hall to see those items we had made for 4-H. And the really spectacular thing was going underneath the grandstand and exploring all those businesses and organizations that were set up under there. So it was a lot of fun. And mostly it was with my family, being with them and being almost the highlight of my whole summer.
Very good. I understand that you might have had some children involved as well in 4-H. So what do you remember about your children's activities at the fair and then after either showing livestock or entering their static exhibits at the round building or the hind building? And what other activities might they have done when they were growing up or even into adulthood?
So we were part of the Smart Cookies 4-H Club, which was mainly home environment classes, but they also did presentations, contests, and there were song contests at that time too. So kind of things that maybe we haven't seen in a while. The whole family was involved. When we did 4-H, everybody got to be a piece of it, even if they weren't in the club at that time. So that expanded my fair experience. When my family was growing up and going to the fair, they got to go on the carnival rides. They got to do the games and eat snow cones and cotton candy. We even stayed to eat the barbecue sandwiches, a little bit different than what they do now because the guys actually dug a pit and put charcoal in there and smoked that meat in the ground. There would be huge lines while we would wait to eat, and you were just crossing your fingers that they wouldn't run out of food before you got to the front of that line. It was such a family experience, although my kids tried to ditch us because they wanted to be there with their friends. So it was a meeting place for them, and it was probably the last activity of the summer, because at that time, fair was in August, and usually the next week, school would start.
Hey Louise, with your involvement over the many years in Extension, what memories do you have of the buildings that were standing back in the 90s when you started, or even earlier as far as when you were growing up, as compared to now? And also, where did the 4-Hers and FFA exhibitors show their livestock, and where were the static exhibits displayed? And how does that now compare to the facilities that we currently have standing at the Butler County Fair?
It was so much fun back then that I hardly remember the buildings. I do remember going into the horse barn and seeing where the horses were. I also remember the round building and going up those stairs and looking at those exhibits. And you know, I thought it was great, and still at some point I decided we needed something new and improved, and I was part of the steering committee that put in the new event center. So I think we're improving all the time, and we're making that experience more than the fair. The Butler County Fair Grounds draws people all year long. So I'm thinking what we're doing is exactly right, and we're making it be the best that it can be.
Very good. In your eyes, how has 4-H and FFA, because all of that runs through your office, how has that impacted the lives of our youth in Butler County, in your opinion?
You know, I love the hands-on learning because it's for the youth, but it's also for the adults that are leading them. So we grow together. I love that relationship. It's what fair is about. It's what 4-H and FFA is about, building relationships with each other and with the adults. It's a rewarding experience, and it has that nod to tradition, and it's evidenced by the numbers of the 4-H families and the FFA families that have second, third, and even fourth generations passing through. The career paths that they choose, it's been interesting to watch as the 4-Hers that I started with in the late 90s and how they've come back to the community and the careers that have been influenced by the project areas that they took. You know, when I joined Extension and started working here, I loved it because I got to go to fair every year and every day of the fair. I loved it because I got to meet the kids and I got to be a part of what they did. I got to experience fair every year through their eyes. I got to see the pride and the accomplishment they felt at the things that they did. And you know, I look at what I do, and I'm proud of what I do too, and how I can make the Butler County Fair the best that it can be. I love Butler County Fair.
Thank you, Louise. We obviously think so much of your service over the past 25 years, and this Butler County Fair would not be as successful as it is without your involvement. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if you remember, I talked about the girls' work and the extension coming together to help these girls. These are just some pictures that were in the archives, and some of those are identified. A lot of them don't have names on them, but it was very segregated. The girls were in the round building, and all of their work was in the round building. So here's a few pictures. Here's another one. You might recognize some of their faces too. If anybody knows names on these pictures, please let me know. And then there's just some more pictures here. We'll roll through these pretty quickly. And a lot of these were in the slideshow that I was showing earlier. And then this is actually, I was going to point out, this is me right here. This is when I was growing up, we had two distinct clubs. The livestock was its own club. So you did Rising City Livestock, and you did swine and beef and horses and sheep. But if you wanted to do sewing and cooking, you were part of the Sunny Pins and Pans. And so we were the Sunny Pins and Pans, and we actually had song contests, which Louise mentioned in hers, and we went on to state and did really well, but we all had matching dresses. Here's another picture. Somebody came up to me and said they know these people, so we'll make sure we get them identified. 1959. And then if you remember back far enough, up in the round building, we all had booths for our 4-H club, and we had competitions, and that was always fun. And then here's some other pictures. I don't know these ladies, but I thought I do know this lady. She's from Rising City. And here's some more. That's the round building. And I think some more of it girls are in there. And so this was sent to me by a lady from Idaho. Her mother was Phyllis Schultz Accock. I think that's how you pronounce it. She was the daughter of Cal and Evelyn Schultz, and they lived about 4 miles south of Brainerd. And again, Sunnysiders 4-H Club, these were some girls that they got together and their pincushions were judged. That was a big thing back then, and her mom received first place for this pincushion. So let's move on. In 1929, there was a new grandstand being built, and I tried to pick out highlights from this article here. They said that that would seat right at 2,000 people with 380 reserved seats. And all seats, the newspaper said, will have backs on them, and people can sit in comfort and watch the races. And then the second page of this, I picked out highlights. There would be 2 restrooms located under the grandstands, one sponsored by David City Commercial Club and the other by Central Bank. And cars would be parked in an organized fashion. And all the ag implements will be in the open or under large tents so they can be seen working, and a liberal display of automobiles and trucks will be had. Now this is a picture of the grandstands, but I think we realized that this is not when it was being built. I think this picture shows the destruction that occurred when we'd always get the windstorms. And it also had the wooden fence already, so at the beginning they did not have that wooden fence. I think this was just a picture of maybe it being repaired. But this is a picture of the reserved seats here with the old wooden floor, and this is the racetrack, and you can see some horses out in the middle of the field. So we're going to switch back now to December 10th of 1935. This was a really big year for the Ag Society, and they decided to come back and reorganize more or less. There's actually a book in the back that has the actual minutes, has articles, it has the bylaws. We found that today, and it's over there. And you can see all the people that were involved. And they decided that all the records and the money from the Butler County Agricultural and Livestock Association would be turned over to the new Ag Society. Dick Ruth was the president of the Ag Society, and his son Bart Ruth brought this in to me. And these were all of the people that helped to organize in 1935. You might not be able to see all the names, but there is that piece of paper over there. And there's just lots of Butler County names on here. And I thought it was interesting that W.J. Anderson and Charlie Limley retired in 1941, and W.H. Anderson said he'd been on the board for 30 years, and it was time for someone else younger to take over. Then the first county fair that was held under the new Ag Society was in the midst of the Great Depression, and that was held on September 14th to 18th of 1936. Obviously it was very dry, there were fewer cattle and hogs, and also a scarcity of flowers. And so some of the displays, I found this, that there was corn from Henry Buck of Ulysses and the Kreitzinger brothers of Bellwood. They attracted a great deal of attention. And then the Ag Hall also had a miniature replica of the Larry Lambie farm near Ulysses, and it was made to scale by the Civilian Conservation Corps, which demonstrated how he could farm his ground following soil erosion prevention work done by its CCC members. And so that camp occupied a portion of the Butler County Fair Grounds from April of 1935 to October of 1938. Then also, let's see here, they used the lumber, actually they used lumber from the CCC camp in Fairbury to build their structures, which included barracks, a mess hall, a bathhouse, a rec building, and a hospital for the young men between the ages of 17 and 23 and a half. And it gave, this program gave men who couldn't find jobs a place to live, and they also helped with the farmlands healing after the Dust Bowls of the 30s. Obviously, this program was developed under the New Deal program by Franklin Roosevelt, and besides what they did for conservation, they also helped the fairgrounds in those years, and they elevated and gravelled the road from the tracks to the entrance of the grounds. They leveled the straightaway in front of the grandstand, they restrung fence, and they built a horse barn that had burned the prior year. But they specifically did soil conservation. These are just some pictures. These are all in the round building being displayed. This was the camp, and this leads out to Highway 15 by the Sunshine Court. Here's Camp Butler, and the round buildings in the background there. There's just probably I would say a barracks. And then we move on to the round building, and also the Hine building. So this is just a building shown prior to the Hine building being built, and you can see here they're digging the trenches, or the footings, excuse me, and this is just where it was gonna go. This is the Hine building almost completed, and this is the one I took the other day showing in its new location, which is west of here. Again, the round building, you can see this is a different angle. Like I said, I remember shows going on over here. I specifically remember my parents, a lot of the parents that are in here. Our 4-H clubs would have our lunches here in the after we showed, so there was a lot of shade over here. And this is a really cool picture, I think, of the fairgrounds. This is the round building again. It was just getting some repairs. Somebody was up on the roof there. And this is the current one that I took the other day on the west side and the east side. This is a picture that is out in the hallway, I believe. And it's just, don't know what year it was taken, but it's of the fair that's, underway, obviously. It's in color, so we know it's newer. And just kind of a cool picture here. Now we're going to switch over to something that was near and dear to everyone's heart, I think, when they came to the fair, and that was the Phillips Hofbar lunch stand. And Bonnie Phillips Ratchie brought a display. It's in the back there on the easel, and I just took snippets out of it. And so in 1938, basically, it was a dare between Mrs. Phillips and her brother, John Duren. Hamburgers were a dime, and the coffee was a nickel, and the profit they made the first year was $10. The fruit pies they were homemade, and they made them ahead of the fair. They froze them, and then they brought them and they baked them at the food stand, and they usually sold around 60 pies a year. And I remember the roast beef. It was always a feature at their stand. And Elizabeth retired after the 65 fair, but her daughter and son-in-law, Lorraine and Leo Hofbar, took it over and ran it another 23 years until 1988. And here's just some pictures of them, and this is the old lunch stand, and all of the names underneath. And then Leo serving up some burgers, and then this was the newer lunch stand. And then this is the family being recognized at the fair for 50 years of service to the Butler County Fair, and that was in 1988. So some more tidbits of history. In 1941, at the end of the year, they gave consent to location of a trailer camp on the south side of the fairgrounds for workers at the Wahoo Bomber Plant. I didn't know that. By the 1940s, the fair was being held in late August, and in 1944, they rebuilt part of the stage and the grandstands, and then they built the board fence. So that's when that happened. In 1945, decided to have the halls open in the evening, so the fair was growing, more interest, and then they moved the dates, like I said, to the end of August to accommodate, as we will know, the carnival, everything centers around the carnival, and stage talent for $1,500. And then I found in the minutes that they talked about moving the fair, and it was a big no. I mean, that was in the minutes. It was a big no. They were going to move it to the park. So, 1948, the board members got $7.50 a day for a stipend, and they spent $175 on horse races for the fair. And then in November of '50, auto races were incorporated into the schedule, and horse races were also kept. In '52, the schedule no longer had horse races, but instead had stock car races for 2 days and tractor races. And then they wanted to go back to a 2-day fair, but they were quickly reminded, according to state statutes, that it required a 3-day fair for county funding. So that was a big no as well. And then they added some wash rack and watering facilities in '52. In '54, this was really big too. Management of the fairgrounds changed from the county supervisors to the Butler County Ag Society. And then stock car racing actually was held during the daytime at the fair in '55. And in '56, the Ag Society discussed 14 races at the fairgrounds that year. And then in '57, the fair started moving up to mid-August. So here's some pictures provided by Karen Pollock Johnson. These are some really cool photos that we didn't have. You might recognize some of those numbers, I don't know. Pretty dusty. That's over to the east side there, and then coming around. And this is the last photo of them coming around the final corner. So those are really nice that she provided those. So now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to listen to a documentary from Dorothy Schultz, who was married to the late Don Schultz. They were involved with the Butler County Fair for many years, and with their children. And Don was a 4-H leader for the Valley 4-H Club in the Bellwood, Octavia, and surrounding areas.
Okay, we have Dorothy Schultz here from David City. And Dorothy, tell us how old you are.
I'm 94. I'll be 95 in July.
Okay. I understand that you and Dawn were heavily involved in the Butler County Fair for many, many years. And I was just wondering, how many years were you and Dawn involved or leaders of the 4-H club?
I really can't remember. I just know we started when we just started to be in 4-H. And that would have been, I forgot already what it was now. And we must have been involved about 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
Maybe longer, I don't know. I just never kept track of it.
Okay. How many generations does your family cover?
Let's see, it would be 2, I guess. We have children and grandchildren. I don't know whether our great-grandchildren were in or not anymore. And I'm not sure. I guess they were. Yeah, that would be good for June, these kids.
Yeah. So, was Dawn a leader of which 4-H club?
Valley 4-H.
Valley. Where did you live prior to moving into town?
5 miles north of David City.
What activities did your family participate in at the Butler County Fair, such as 4-H or FFA or other activities?
A little bit in FFA because Uncle Randy and Wayne were in FFA too. I don't know which it really went under when they showed though. I think it was 4 years.
Okay. How about your daughters? You have 2 daughters?
3 daughters, but only one was in it, the youngest one. She saw the boys and she thought that was good.
What do you remember the most about your children's activities at the fair after showing livestock? For example, the carnival, or if there was a carnival?
carnival? Well, there was a carnival, I think, every time. I don't know. That's one thing, I think there was a carnival, because that didn't interest me too much, but it sure liked it. And, I don't know really, what was the other question?
Just if there was a carnival or not.
Oh, yes, yes, there was usually a carnival, it was kind of stinky, but there was a carnival.
So what did the families do for meals back in the early days when your children participated in 4-H, such as when Randy was in?
We each some meal, we fixed a meat dish and whatever else we wanted with it, and we put it all together, and we had a feast. Of course, everybody was hungry.
As a club?
Yes, 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 we set it, we put it on the tables under the not the grandstand, but the, where they showed at the time they showed the sheep and the hogs. Yeah, we had tables there then. Yeah. Good.
So when you participated at the Butler County Fair, what memories do you have of the buildings that were standing back then, and where they showed the livestock and any static exhibits that you might remember?
Well, we didn't have the big building we have now, that's for sure. And it was hot every place, it was no air conditioning. And of course the sheep barn, and the olive barn, and the cattle barn, that was all we had. I don't know if some of that has been replaced now. And otherwise well, like I said, we put all the food together and ate together. And I don't know, after the show, everybody was happy with what they got. I made it even better, you know. So.
Where did they show at?
Oh.
Outside?
Oh, one year they put up snow fence, and they showed it, just east of the barns. We just put up that snow fence and showed in that. There weren't too many sheep at the time. And they had a herd over there with the fences. It was quite a job. And nothing was too planned at the time, you know. They didn't know what they were going to do. Yeah.
So in your mind, what significant event or construction of a new building stands out for the Butler County Fair that you think has had the most impact?
Well, the building that they put up, what is it called now? The
Event Center?
Event Center, yes.
What other special memories do you have of the Butler County Fair?
Kids throwing each other into the tanks. Or something like that. Otherwise, I don't know what else. It was usually hot, so it was July and August, so it would be hot. It was nice to get done. Go home. Take a shower. Yeah. I don't know, we enjoyed it. I know when Don was appointed leader, he said, maybe I should be at that fair in the morning and not wait till the show. Yeah, and had the instructions, really. Because the kids just all of a sudden appointed him. I think their dad put up to that, because they didn't want to do it anymore. Yeah.
Okay, Dorothy mentioned the tanks, people getting thrown in the tanks, and I found this picture here of Wayne, her son, Terry Papa, Bob Kobza, Jim Meisenberg. A dip after the hog show, but I haven't figured out who they were throwing in. Probably Meg, okay. So I thought that was a fun photo. Here's some more livestock photos, and these are some old ones that were pulled out of the extension photos. We have a ton more. Obviously, we didn't have, there's just not enough time in our presentation here, but I'm just gonna roll through these. You might recognize people. We've got dairy, we've got beef, horses. There's Gary Zellinger right there with his sisters. These are some newer photos here, a little bit newer. My dad is right there from 1950s. And then of course we've got the infamous Russ Moravec with his plaid pants. And Don Boslowski over here. Then we have Barb Swoboda, Ruth, right here. And we have Connie Swoboda. And then some other Dwight kids. She told me who they are, but I didn't get those identified. That was a fun photo. Here's some people. I think Connie was one of these that was helping to paint the beef barn. I had that picture twice. And then we've got some more. We've got some sheep photos. And I saw this picture, I had to put this in here, and I looked at that and I said, that's Val Lovitsky. That's totally Val Lovitsky. But I needed to confirm it, so I confirmed it with Barb. And yes, this is Val in the middle, and then his brother, Dan, and then Jerome Hodovy. And in the back, she thought maybe Willis Jacob and Larry Soder. So, and then, sorry, I did the presentation, so I have the right to put a few of my dad in. But my grandma saved everything, and so this is my dad, won champion Berkshire hog back in the 50s. And again, these were my dad's photos, but I thought it was interesting because this is how they showed hogs back then. They just set up panels, and that's how they showed the hogs. And this was sent to me by a cousin that lives down by Blue Hill, and her dad, Dean Ruth, who had the champion dairy. He was the champion dairy showman back in the 50s. So some more tidbits. Back in 1962, they discussed having a horse show, so that was new. The Burgess family, Penio family, and Zellinger family gave suggestions on the program and other info, and it was scheduled for 1962. And then from what we can see is the actual barbecue that everybody talks about started in 1962, and then in 64 it was reported that Gerald Chubb Biracle removed the meat from the pit after cooking. In 1965, this was another milestone. Dick Grubaugh was the auctioneer, was selected as the auctioneer for the calf sale and auction, and other auctioneers in the county were asked to be there to help ring and be recognized. And in 66, they started the Children's Barnyard, and they also cemented 8 spaces on the east end under the grandstands, which was a huge deal back then. And then in 67, they had an office under the grandstands, and Gerald Croft was hired for $1.50 an hour. And then in 1968, they built some new restrooms on the east end of the grandstands at a cost of $6,000 roughly. And then in 69, they also they accepted bids for the show facility for the livestock for $6,500. Here's a picture of the barbecue way back. Yeah, this is one of the where we talked about the long lines to the barbecue. This was part of it. And then these are just some gentlemen that were either, I think they were probably taking him out of the pit. I mean, he doesn't have any gloves on though, so I'm not sure. But here's just some pictures of the guys. You know, they'd sit there for days, and they had a lot of fun doing it. People looked forward to it. And here's another picture. I'm sure you recognize some of these men. And this barbecue, I don't think is tied to the one that started in 1962, because this was actually in 1948 we found. It was a free beef barbecue put on by the co-op. It was a co-op day at the Butler County Fair. So I don't think it was the same thing, but look at all the people. Now we're going to move into some information on the Hine Building. In '71, they voted to move forward on erecting an exhibit building, and that was dedicated on June 1st of '72 and later named the John Hine Building. Then they also, a new office was just erected north of the Hine Building in '73. And then a new lunch stand was built in 1976. And in '77, the grandstand renovation began, which included the metal floor decking, new seats, new bleachers, new stage, and a chain link fence in front of the grandstands. So here's some pictures of the renovations of the grandstands. Now we're going to switch gears again, and then shortly after that we're going to take a real quick break because I know everybody probably wants to get up and stand. But we have just so much information we want to share. So this is from Hank Kobza, who's been involved with the Butler County Fair for many years, and also he's been announcing at the horse show for over 50 years.
Okay, we have Hank Kobza from David City, formerly of Butler, Nebraska, who for many years was involved with the Butler County Fair. And Hank, how many years have you and your wife Bonnie been involved with Butler County Fair?
Probably with the kids showing, it would be probably about late 60s when they started showing animals and things at the fair.
So over 60 years.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a while.
That's great. So as a young child and adult growing up, what do you remember most about the Butler County Fair?
I would say probably at that time it was a big deal at David City. That was like a major trip to come to the county fair. And it wasn't, but it seemed like that for us as kids. So we would come once in a great while. Not every year did we be able to attend. We lived east of Diane Duren, Nebraska, and we didn't have the opportunity to be close to 4-H and take part in 4-H. So I didn't do that until later in life. That we got, I guess our family probably got us into the fair.
So what do you remember when you were young coming to the fair? What activities or what do you remember?
Well, at that time, and that's been so many years ago, that things were so different because it was not as fancy as it is today, but we thought it was because of the fact that we had the opportunity to come, saw livestock, and that's what we were always interested in, was livestock. That we thought that was the big thing. And then my wife Bonnie got involved in the cooking and stuff like that, and the kids did too. We had a couple of girls that went to the state and showed at the state as well. So I guess that turned into be a bigger thing than we thought it would.
Yes. So in regard to your children and their activities at the fair, after they showed, whether it be cattle or hogs or sheep or whatever, or entering static exhibits at the Hine Building, what do you remember most about what your children did after that? Did they go to the carnival, stock car races, heisting, things like that?
They attended all that. They were young kids just ready to spurt out and do their thing. So yeah, they attended shows in front of the grandstand, and what they did after that, a lot of times maybe we should know and didn't know. That's what I remember. They enjoyed it. It was just kind of a summer activity.
Okay. As far as meals for the family, I know that it's changed a lot over the years. When you were younger versus today as an adult, watching your grandchildren or great-grandchildren come to the fair, what do you remember about what you did back as a 4-H club when the kids were growing up versus today?
I think visited the lunch stands. There's the west one and the one right by the grandstand, and visited those. And I guess it was a big that I remember the most is the Hine building. That is the one that stuck out because Hines were neighbors down in the valley, and we thought it was great when John Hine took apart and put that building up. And actually, the building was used for a lot of different things that people showed there. You know, I remember the quilts, the baking, the cooking, and then the activities when kids had different projects they made to show up at the fair. And I guess that's that's the building I remember the most, is that one. And that's because I think most of the activity was around it. And the other thing was under the grandstand. There were a lot of activities under the grandstand, people showing their sale items or whatever they might have. So that was interesting as well. But those are the two most important, I think.
So, word has it that you were involved with horse show for many, many years. And that didn't go unnoticed, by the way. So how many years did you help to organize, run the show, and tell us a little story about that?
Okay, the way I got started, I used to work for Grubel Brothers at one time in Yoshua. And Dick Grubel was supposed to announce the horse show. And that was in 1970. And he had another commitment that he could not make. So he told me, he said, why don't you go down there and announce the horse show? And I said, Dick, I don't know anything about the horse show. I said, there's nothing I know about that. He said, don't worry about it. Go down there and they'll tell you what to do. So I went down there and I started. And I talked to him after that. And I said, Dick, you gotta go announce the horse show. And he said, no, you take care of it. So that's how I got started. So it's been a long ride. And I enjoyed it. The kids, I remember from years ago, and today they're not old, but they're crawling up there. You know? Yeah. So, but I enjoy the kids the most. Yeah.
So many hot days for
Oh.
horse shows.
I remember when we were with that horse show, and it would rain a lot, and the arena was so muddy that we couldn't have a horse show. But everybody was there, the horse show, the judge, and all. So what did they do? They moved us on the green grass that would be west of the grandstand. And so a lot of the activities were cut short or didn't even happen. But we showed on that grass, and it was really something very different, you know. That one I remember, I guess, really the most. That was a hard time trying to get all the activities, you know, organized.
So facility-wise, I know that they've made some improvements to the horse arena and also the
They did.
announcer stand. What
Yeah.
do you remember being the best change in terms
Oh,
of that?
okay, the change, I have to say, in 1970, I could climb the steps easy. Then the steps get long and hard. But, yeah, they have a nice, we call it the crow's nest. It's a nice facility. And then, now they made the shade for the people that are watching the horse show, which made a roof there, and that turns out really good. So they made some really good improvements, I think. Yeah. And they take good care of the arena as well.
So your family's involvement with the livestock subsidy sale has been instrumental in all 4-H and FFA families throughout Butler County. How many years have you done this, and along with your family, and what are some of your best memories?
I think that we started in about 2001 maybe, or 2. I'm not sure on that year exactly. But they had the subsidy auction, and my brother Jim and myself bought about 4 different champions that year, or 5, I don't remember. And I really felt sorry for the kids because they weren't getting any kind of money to speak of. And at that time, the subsidy was, I think, $3 per hog. And I don't remember the rest of the animals. But I remember Dick Grubbo having to auction to try to get the $3. And the Fair Board, it was kind of turned out so bad, they said they're not going to have one next year. So Bonnie and I and my son John approached him and said, is it okay, can we do the subsidy auction? And they said, that would be fine, but the Fair Board is going to have nothing to do with it. That's going to be strictly up to you. And so when we started the first couple of years, it was tough as well, but it just seemed to grow every year. And now the prices just are surprising to me, but groups are getting together and purchasing the subsidy. And so when we started, it was more individualistic. It was like the co-ops and the banks, and they were just one entity that was buying. Today it's kind of changed. So, but I think right now the kids are getting something that's worth something. So hopefully they enjoy that. So, but it's something that I'm happy with because if we wouldn't have done it, I don't know if anybody else would have stepped in because at the time nobody was going to step in. So that's how that all took place and how we got to the position that we are today.
So, thank you, Hank. We really appreciate all of your years of service to the horse show and also to the livestock subsidy sale and just your general involvement with the Butler County Fair. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being asked to give a comment or two on it. So.
Okay, moving right along. May of '79, the board reported that there would be a check group providing a free show at the Butler County Fair. And that's been going for quite a few years now. Larry Vanis, Ed Meisenberg, Doug Matulka took over running the races from the JCs. And in '79, the show arena was added to the south side of the sheep barn. And in 1980, improvements to the horse arena and the Rising City Horse Club agreed to take care of the horse arena all year round. And in '81, the David City FFA took over running the children's barnyard. And then in '83, there were 300 trees planted on the north side of the fairgrounds, which provided a nice windbreak. And then in '84, they hired a promotional director for $3,000, and he would seek entertainment for Saturday night in a range of $3,500 to $4,000, and we all know what it costs nowadays for entertainment. And in '84, Larry Vanis reported that they'd have 18 races at the racetrack, and with a 2-day stint on July 5th and 6th. And then in '84, they also moved the horse arena to the very northwest side of the fairgrounds, corner of the fairgrounds. And in '85, the omelet breakfast was started, and that's still going today. And a pet show was started at the fair in '85, and then after John Hine passed away, the board in '85 decided to name the exhibit hall after John as a tribute to him. And then the garage was built for the maintenance area for the Ag Society in '86. The board in July of '86 accepted checks from the late Zelma Ratchie and the George Romshek Jr. family, and the new entrance to the fair, east entrance to the fair, was dedicated in their memory. In May of '87, they voted to approve the expense for use of a computer to be used at the fair, and that was a big deal back then. And in March of '87, discussion was held on a liquor license. Meanwhile, the West Beer Garden was going very strong, and maybe Little Mexico too. That's an inside joke, by the way. June of '87, the stock car races were canceled for the entire year, so that was pretty much the end of the stock car races. And in '88, then the new restrooms and a lunch stand were built on the west side of the fairgrounds, east of the horse barn, for almost $26,000. And then the board finally in 1988 decided to serve beer only on Thursday night, and then possibly the entire fair in 1989. In '90, the board approved the expenditure to cover the cement area that was poured several years earlier. This became the covered patio area where many activities are held along with the beer garden. And then in '92, the Ag Society worked out an arrangement with the Ball Association to purchase one half of the land adjoining the fairgrounds to the south, which was a very good move, and that was 23.45 acres, and it cost was $27.5. And then, sadly, in July of '93, that was the first year that meat was not put in the pit, and Clayton Castle from Brainerd prepared the meat. We're gonna take just a quick break. I think everybody probably wants to stand up. Is that right? Or do you want to keep going? Stand up, 5 minutes, and then we're going to be right back. And then we'll have another documentary. We did tell you this was longer program than the rest because there is so much history. So if someone's upset, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of history here. So we're going to go ahead. Do you want to turn the lights down, please? Can someone in the back turn the lights down? That's good. That's good. Unless somebody else wants to control the lights. Okay, we're going to switch gears again and provide a documentary from Gary and Marilyn Zellinger, who have been involved with the Butler County Fair for many years, along with Marilyn, 6 generations of the Zellinger family, and Marilyn served on the Ag Society for 23 years.
We have Marilyn and Gary Zellinger, longtime Butler County residents, and we are recognizing 6 generations of the Zellinger family, and also their extended family was recognized by Exarban for 100 years of land ownership in Butler County, which is quite a milestone, and we want to make sure that we give them proper recognition for that. We're going to move right into our interview questions. So, what years, Gary and Marilyn, have you been involved with the Butler County Fair?
I can remember back to about 1955. I was 10 years old. Dad had bought a little pony for me, and he got it so I could go help get cattle in, the milk cows. So it was about 55 or 56 that I started at the county fair in riding ponies, and I had competed with Diane Duren, and so it was the beginning I could think of. Then Dad had been, and the family had been in sheep since they were kids. So Dad got me some South Down sheep, and we raised them. We started working with them. I was probably about 1959, 1960, maybe, that we worked the sheep and took them to the county fair, and my sisters got involved also. And so we were learning how to wash the sheep and trim them and block them, and then learning how to show them in the ring. And we did that up until 1964. Then that's when I graduated and drifted away from home. But my sisters kept on that, and they got into cattle too. But we didn't have cattle when I was 4-H. So we mainly just ponies and sheep.
Okay, how about Marilyn? How long have you been involved with the Butler County Fair?
Since 1980, when they moved back here to the farm, and of course, because we both have 4-H backgrounds, we got our kids involved, and Grandpa had horses.
So quite a few years you've been involved.
Yes.
Yes. So Gary, I'm going to start with you here as a young child growing up. You mentioned about 1955, 1956. What do you remember most about the Butler County Fair? I know there's lots of memories, but what comes to the top of your mind?
One of the highlights, if I remember, was the barbecue day on Saturday. They would dig a pit, and Dad helped on that endeavor. They got the fire going for several days, and they wrapped the meat, and it was tantalizing Saturday. It was so good. I remember that carnival, cotton candy, the candied apples. Carnivals are so lucky to have good carnivals all these years. The sheep shows was in the same building that they had. Actually, that building is gone now; it's been replaced by the Hine building. But some of you remember that cattle barn is there, the hog barns are there, the horse barn. I spent a lot of time with the horse barn with the pony and knowing the people and working with the sweeping those stalls and we were close to town, so we didn't leave our ponies or horse in town, so we took it home just for the day of the show. I think our
Okay, so we talked about your children as well, as far as showing livestock. What do you remember the most about your children's activities at the fair after they showed the livestock and entering static exhibits? I'm sure that carnivals, stock car races, all of those kinds of things, grandstands, Maryland and Gary.
I think just enjoying visiting with other kids, and they've made a lot of friends over the years, and so they knew the other 4-Hers very well.
It's a social area. There was a couple of years I think they didn't have a carnival, and that was really the whole year. But then they were able to get a carnival back in. Kids enjoyed this. It's social. Kids all enjoyed the carnival, the work it took to get their projects done, and without help like Delmer Lang, oh golly, he did so much work. Louise is in there, Hank Kobza. I think he's been a staple as an announcer at the horse shows.
Okay, so kind of to elaborate on that, when you were growing up, Gary, and you were in 4-H, what do you remember about how families ate together, or versus today as an adult watching your children or grandchildren come to the fair as far as food stands? So what did you do when you were growing up for meals?
Well, a lot of times when you didn't have time during show days, so the families, mothers would have picnic baskets and coolers. They'd have lunch meats and sandwiches and chips and sodas, and we ate in the trailers. Or tarp, I had rigged up tarps attached to the trailer. We'd sit under with lawn chairs, and kids would come and go, grab a pop and go, and get their horses just right, get ready for the next event. But it was a lot of people would bring their lunches, sandwiches from home, and it was a treat to have a hamburger or a hot dog, corn dog from the vendors at the county fair. It was a treat, and so we realized that. So we did what we could to let the kids have memories of the county fair. And so you gave me some ideas. I'm going to ask my kids, what do you remember of growing up at the county fair? So it's a topic of conversation in the family itself. So I'll be interested to hear what they have to remember, probably more than what I remember.
Probably more than what we want to know.
Static exhibits, you were very involved with all of that. Talk about the buildings that were used, back in the 80s versus what's there now at the Butler County Fair.
Well, you use what you're at. You put our roofs up and worked on getting display boards, so we had something to display them on, and utilized the round building, and just worked at it hard and
How does that compare to what's there now at the Butler County?
clean, comfortable, well lit, spacious.
Very functional. Okay. In your mind, what significant event or construction of a new building stands out in your mind for the Butler County Fair, or that has had the most impact during your involvement with the fair? I know that's a pretty big question in terms of how many years you've been involved with it.
I would say the Pine Building and the grandstand.
I'm gonna kick in that,
Personally.
the whole building that housed the Taste of Nebraska. There's been so many events that building has sheltered. That Taste of Nebraska has just been a boon to the county and pulling people together for one night. But then again, you've got your turtle races, you've got your tractor race, the kiddie tractor pulls, all these other events that are out in there. They give a place in the open air, which they never had before. It was always out in the open somewhere. So that has been probably, other than the new building, probably the best addition that they came up with to utilize space in this county fair.
Marilyn, this is probably more directed at you, since you were involved with the Butler County Ag Society and on the board for almost 23 years, which is another significant contribution. I know early on the technology was much different than it is now. So how would you describe how technology changed the way the Butler County Ag Society operates today versus 25 years ago?
Well, being in education, I was working with technology, so, just the advent of the computers and the easiness to record things, write things down, helped. And just the technology itself has really made a big difference.
I don't know.
So in summary here, thank you so much for this interview, Gary and Marilyn. And it's really fun to document your memories. And we want to also thank you for your service and commitment to the Butler County Fair.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving right along. In 1994, the board approved an expenditure to add on to the covered patio, and that would be the 30 by 12 enclosed area to be used to serve beer and meals. And then they also approved a shelter to be built by the West Lunch Stand in 97. In 98, they approved electric camper hookups. And in 2000, they approved bids for the grooming shed to be built between the swine and the cattle barns. In 2001, they built an arch for the north entrance in memory of Jim Roundtree. And then in 2002, a memorial in memory of Denny Romshek from his family was received. A west archway was approved to be erected, and then later it was also included in memory of Don Maxon. And in 2002, March, the Ag Society motioned to build a new sheep goat barn directly north of the show ring. And probably the most disappointing thing in April of 2002 is that the block outhouse by the hog barn was removed. July of 2002, aluminum stage in front of the grandstands was approved, and the grandstand was resited in 2007. We did skip over about 5 years there, and I thought I missed something, but I went back through the minutes, and there really wasn't significant changes, but of course the Fair Board was busy. And the ticket booth was approved in February of 2008, and then the first truck show and shine made in the shade event was in July of 2008, and that was run by Randy and Mary Schultz and their family, and it's still running strong. And in March of '09, a 40 by 100 building was approved to be built, but the location was going to be finalized. Then in '09, we actually had an ATM installed at the fairgrounds, and then discussion started in 2010 of building a new building. And in July of 2010, colored drawings were presented to the board and possible donors, and placing the initiative on the May 11 ballot was discussed. And then 2010, 2011, the plans moved forward with placing the new building on the ballot in May of 2012. Proposed cost was $1.465 million, and then came May 15th, voting day in 2012. And sadly, the bond did not pass in 2012. Also, new software for open class was being utilized, and then long-range planning started again in November of 12. And then a foundation was set up in 13, rewiring the grandstand was approved in 13, and also discussing different bathrooms, different location, and so forth. And then in 14, they incorporated digital signage in various locations in neighboring towns and along highway locations, which was really a good move. And then they designated handicap parking over here in July of 14, and then a new road was placed. And also in 14, the ETICS contract was signed, and then research and meetings began for trying to build a new building. And this is kind of a fun one. The board stays really, really busy, as we all know. And since I got to do the presentation, I wanted to show you how tired 2 of the board members were back in 14. They didn't even know that Mary and I were, actually somebody else was taking the picture, it was probably Shauna. But they were really, really tired. I won't tell you what time this was taken. So we're gonna switch gears now to Randy Schultz. And he has served on the board of the Butler County Ag Society for 25 years, along with being a Butler County resident. And this is our last documentaries for the evening.
Okay, we have Randy Schultz from Garrison, Nebraska, who has been involved with the Butler County Fair for many years, starting in the late 60s. And we're going to be interviewing him today on his involvement with the Butler County Fair. So Randy, again, what year did you start showing in FFA?
I believe it was 1969. 69 or 70, I can't remember for sure.
Through David City Public Schools?
Yes. When I was a freshman. So it was probably 70 would have been my first year.
So basically you've been involved since then?
Yes.
Either showing or, as a young child growing up, what do you remember most about the Butler County Fair?
That was summer vacation for us. We didn't travel, we didn't go anywhere. Dad was worked all the time, busy, so we went to the fair. That was our vacation. That's the way we spent our short vacation. But we always had fun.
What do you remember the most about your children as they were growing up and coming up through the fair after their activities, showing livestock or entering static exhibits, for example?
You mean what they did after they went to grandstand activities, just getting together with the rest of the club members, school friends and relatives. It was always just a big, one happy family, big party.
So carnivals, stock car races, what do you remember as you were growing up too? What are some of your favorite memories?
Well, there was always the carnival to go to, and hanging out with your friends. And I don't remember really how much running around we did when we were little kids, as far as going to the fair. But when we were in school and in high school and showing, we got to do our share of running around and probably getting in trouble.
So, I know I asked your mother about this, but what do you remember about meals for your families when you were little versus today as an adult and watching your grandchildren come to the fair? What's changed or what's the same? What's your...
Well, it's still pretty much one big happy family, but always something to eat. You don't ever have to worry about going hungry. That's never been an issue. And it's a good place to sit down and talk over the day or talk over the morning or whatever. Back in the day, like my mom said, we just threw everything on tables and everybody sat down and ate together as a club.
So when you were younger and you were involved in FFA, what do you remember about the buildings that were standing back then? Where did you show your livestock? Things like that.
All I ever showed was sheep, and I know we showed a couple different spots, but the most main place I can remember is south of the old sheep barn, which is no longer there. And we showed there for several years. Seemed like, anyway.
How does that now compare to the facilities that are currently standing at the Butler
Well,
County Fair?
we've since built a new sheep barn, and everything's closer, and everybody congregates in one area. So all the livestock shows are in one spot, except the horses and small animals. So I think it's a lot more convenient for everybody, close, and just a whole lot nicer situation. It might be a little bit warmer because it's under our show arena. It gets kind of hot there through the day, but we've got fans and everything, so we do pretty good with that.
Okay. So in your mind, based on the things we just talked about with buildings and just infrastructure at the fair, what significant event or possibly construction of any type of building stands out in your mind for the Butler County Fair that has had the most impact during your involvement with the Butler County Fair? And I also want to mention too that you've been involved with the Butler County Ag Society and you have been on the board for 25 years.
Yes.
So you can elaborate on that as well.
I've seen a lot of things happen, a lot of things change, a lot of things gone. Our new event center, I guess, is the thing that stands out the most to me. Excellent facility. My point of view, anyway. I miss the old grandstand. That was a kind of a landmark, and I hated to see that go, but it was one of them things. Times change, buildings wear out. We've put up a new sheep barn, and the old one needed to go. It was pretty bad. And moved the Hine building, and we've got a nice fairgrounds. I'm proud of it.
So being on the Ag Society board for 25 years is quite a milestone, and you should be very proud of that. How has technology changed the way that the Butler County Ag Society operates today versus 25 years ago or even 20 years ago? I'm sure there's some things that come to your mind.
Well, there's e-tickets for ticket sales, and a lot of that stuff is done online now. I know they use different things in the event center for lining things up, with the computerized and everything, and it's I think it's streamlined it. I don't deal with it too much.
Digital signage.
Yes, that is a nice thing, and it shows a lot, and I wish we could do more of that. And hopefully down the road we will. But that has made a big difference, getting our name out there and renting those things early, getting them on the roadside so people can see what's coming up.
I think you might have moved to actually not hanging all the banners anymore. That too.
I think we do still hang a few, but yes, which is a good thing too. We brought that digital sign up on the grounds more and right up on the midway, and that helps a lot. People can see it all the time. It runs all day long.
So, just summarizing, what other special memories do you have with the Butler County Fair? I'm sure there's many.
I never got thrown in the tank. people getting together, all our kids come around and everybody else's kids, and it's a fun event, fun family event.
Yeah, lots of great memories, and thank you, Randy, for all of your years of service at the Butler County Ag Society Board and your family's involved. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. In January of 15, the supervisors visited the Ag Society meeting and recommended the vote of the people for a new building. And they felt that they would get more buy-in if they put it up to the people. The Ag Society board decided they would visit a number of sites around Butler County to get ideas for best structure, flow of food, and kitchen facilities. Also, a think tank here in Butler County also met with the Ag Society and felt it was a good idea to move forward with the initiative. Then in August of 15, Mark Montford was hired to work for the Ag Society on the bond issue. And the Ball Association then in 15 also approached the Ag Society about another 1.7 acres for sale, and a motion was made to purchase that land. Chief Industries was selected as to head up the design work for the new building. And in October of 15, they presented plans for the design build for contractors to build for the building and the sewer and water. And then in November of 15, a decision to place the new building. They had lots of different ideas, of course, and where the Hine building would go and where the office is located. And then in December of 15, they met with supervisors to inform them of the cost of the new building. So 3 years later, it was almost another $500,000. It went to 1.95 million. Oh, I thought I changed that slide. I put Friends of Library, and that's not right. Sorry about that. But there was a Friends of the Butler County Ag Society building committee formed in an effort to involve more people of the county. So it wasn't just board members, to educate and inform the general public of the costs and benefits. And I proudly served on that committee with many other people here in this room. So then in 16, also the Butler County Ag Society Foundation was formed, and then they made plans to move forward with moving buildings in anticipation of the bond issue passing. Friends of the Butler County Event Center Committee, we strategically and on purpose held meetings in every community in Butler County, and we worked really, really hard. We did flyers, we did Facebook posts, we did yard signs, we canvassed, we had an open house, and then we also had frequently asked questions sheets, so if people were not certain or they needed more information, we had all that available. And then came voting day, May 10th, and everybody was really anxious to see if the bond issue was going to pass, and it was so close that we didn't get to find out that night, and that was kind of a letdown, but we crossed our fingers, and the recount proved the bond passed by 4 votes. And I'm proud to say that we're all sitting in a wonderful facility now because of that. So, you know, it's just great to be in a really nice facility. That also allowed then the board to move forward with getting the building started for the completion of the 17 fair. And so 17 was even more rewarding. All hands were on deck with all board members. They opened and accepted bids. The county approved it in March of 17. Construction began, and the building was maybe not completed, but it was ready to move in and to be used for the fair in July of 17. After that, the phone started ringing off the wall and events started getting booked. The board of directors handled most of the bookings at first. And of course, with any new building, you have some things that need to be changed, so they needed to do some modifications to accommodate larger groups. Also for the kitchen and the bar, they needed a more efficient process. So here's a picture of the Butler County Event Center that was built. Here's another one. I took this one the other day, so it has a few cars in front of it. And here's a plaque that's out in the entryway recognizing all of the board members that were on the board then, along with the contractor, and then a special thank you to the committee that helped the board get the bond issue passed. And this is also, I want to recognize all of the past Ag Society board members. There's quite a few here in the room tonight, and I just want to make sure that on your way out there is a plaque out there that recognizes all of them since 1911. Actually, it might be 1935, but make sure you look at that. This is a picture of the current board it was last year's picture. There's one person on here that is no longer on, and then we do not have John Fenslow and Tyler Vandenberg pictured. This is also the current members of the Ag Society, and they're all working very, very hard to keep bringing a wonderful county fair to all of you. New improvements, the work just never ends, and so we want to recognize all of the board members, the current board members. In 18, I think honestly they were just tired. Everybody was tired. The bond issue passed, and they were getting settled into the new event center and working out the management side of things. And then in 19, they decided to start on the round building. And they took bids for construction work. We actually had a wrestling match in here. I remember attending that. A portion of the grandstands was torn off in March of 19, so we had more destruction to the grandstands. I think you all remember we had major flooding in 2019, and they also expanded the camper area with generators. And then a structural engineer deemed, and they were working with insurance companies, of course, through all of this, but the engineer deemed the grandstand roof had to come off in order to have the 19 fair. And supports and braces would need to be replaced, da-da-da. And then also the Bloodmobile began here in the new facility in 19. And then a structural engineer was hired to discuss ideas for the grandstands. They weren't certain they wanted to just replace the roof. They wanted to talk about other options. In 2020, the continued grandstand issues, discussion whether the existing structure should be replaced or a new structure would be pursued. And then, if you all recall, we had COVID in 2020. And then the ads went in the newspaper for bids on a new grandstand. And then in May of 2020, they discussed pretty heavily how to move forward with fair activities with the CDC guidelines. They did make a decision to tear down the old grandstand and replace it with a steel structure. They also decided to have a fair in 2020, a little bit with social distancing requirements and different release times and deadlines. And then in August of 2020 and September, things really started moving with the new grandstand. So they demolished and removed the old wooden grandstand. And I was told by Cork de Whistler that the metal the metal walkway and stage actually went up to Clearwater, Nebraska for the rodeo. So that's kind of cool. It's still being used. And then ideas for the renovation of the round building were tossed around in August of 20, and also bids were secured for dirt work for the new grandstand area. The target date for the new grandstands was July. They were told in January, and they'd be built, and then the Ag Society would decide on what rooms would go underneath. Also, there was a new progress show that started in 21. Also, 21, a hotel feasibility study was discussed, as we had said many times that if we built this new event center, there would be a need for a hotel. And then the hay bale decorating contest started in 21. The St. Peter's Church, sadly, decided not to have a pie stand in 2022. They did updated lighting. The fiber optics project began, and public annexation of the fairgrounds was in November of 2022. In 2023, they had more enhancements to the round building were discussed, and then the city decided they wanted to take over the soccer field lease as to be able to use the fields for other recreational purposes, and that was approved in December of 23. Moving into 24, last year, the board decided to start talking about 1- and 5-year improvement plans. And then in August, the plans started for the 150th celebration of the Butler County Fair. And finally, we're in 2025, and the board decided in February to have fireworks again at this fair here in July. And then they also hosted a sponsorship and board alumni kickoff party in April. And then they did decide to add 1 cooler trailer and 1 freezer trailer that's been purchased for the 2025 fair in the patio area. And Round Barn improvements continue to take place and be ready before the 2025 fair. So that's a 150-year timeline that I've presented here. I don't want to dismiss some of these really important things. The carnival rides, that's my dad up here in the 50s on the Ferris wheel. The frog and turtle races began in 2010. Dan and Becky Creshaw and their family and many others are involved with that. The Made in the Shade truck show that we talked about, the polka night, figure eight, demo derby, tractor pedal pull, pie and ice cream, and the Taste of Nebraska. So these are just a few of the pictures. We have tons of them, but I just kind of pulled out a few here so we don't forget to recognize all those main activities at the fair. The demo derby. So that takes us to now. And thanks to those back in 1911 that had the vision and fortitude to continue to pursue having the Butler County Fair, lots of milestones that have been reached and many more to come. What's next, we don't know, but most certainly only good things will come to the Butler County Fair. And that finishes my presentation. Gina's going to come up here and say a few words. Can you turn up the lights?
Okay, we have some prizes that we want to give away to those who stuck around. Let's draw for a cooler, what do you call these? Insulated cups, okay, from the Nebraska Extension. So, you have to be present to win. Look at your ticket number. Can you read it for me? 334210. 334210. Oh, Sandy gets a cup. Sandy has so many cups in her cupboard, she has no idea what to do. You know a farmer, don't you? They need those. Okay, we're now gonna draw for a book. And this is our book this year. 334221. You get a book. They are for sale on the table. And we're gonna give Diane a tote bag. Thank you so much for your work. Diane put in hours and hours and hours of work, and we so appreciate it. She did a fabulous job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the volunteers, and thank you mostly to all of you for coming, because that's really important. And of course, our grantors, our Butler County Area Foundation Fund, Humanities Nebraska, and the Butler County Ag Society. Thank you so very, very much. And everybody with a tag like this on is a volunteer who helped out, and we appreciate them too. So have a nice evening. I don't think you're going to get blown away. Yes. Oh, thank you. And our next program is in October on the 6th. It'll be Jeannie Hine. It'll be Kevin Meisenberg. It'll be Carolyn Dwork and one more. Jeannie, what's your name? Why is my brain not saying your name? Jeanette Hine, sorry. And it'll be all about the cemeteries in Butler County. So thank you. Safe night, everyone.